Hi, I'm Ben Landers, the founder of Blue Corona, and you're listening to Growth Stories. Thank you for tuning in. Before I get started today, our marketing team wanted me to remind you that if you own a home service company and you're looking for guides, insights, tips to grow your business, in addition to listening to these podcasts, be sure to check out Blue Corona's blog. Go to www.bluecorona.com/blog. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Lori Rhead. Her and her husband, Vance, own Mountain Air in Ogden, Utah. Lori grew up in the HVAC business, and she is a longtime client, an amazing human being, super positive and optimistic, which you'll hear is really key when you're trying to grow and build a business. They started the business in 2008, obviously a very challenging time period, and as well as to start a business. And again, I think Lori's mindset and that positivity, her and her husband's commitment to delivering the absolute best for their customers really has been a key to their success. So listen and enjoy. Lori, welcome to Growth Stories. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining me. And maybe just start with an introduction, you and your business for the audience.
Okay, I'm Lori Rhead, and I am the president and co-owner of Mountain Air, along with my husband Vance, who is an incredible human being, and he is unbelievably brainy. So that really helps with a lot of things. I like the outdoors. I love the ocean. My house is 10 minutes from my favorite ski resort, Snow Basin. And so it's famous for the 2002 Olympic downhill races. So I do love to ski, and I do love to water ski. And most people refer to my wakeboard boat as my firstborn. So most of my good stories come from there.
So with the wakeboard boat, do you do that where do you do that? The Great Salt Lake?
Oh, no.
I was going to say, I didn't even think that was like so thick. I don't know much about wakeboarding.
Well, I have a lake that's about a half an hour from my house. And back in the day, I spent a lot of time on that lake. I don't so much anymore. I go up to another lake. It's a couple hours away, Bear Lake, which is the same color as the Caribbean. And I'm not exaggerating. I would show you the stories. But my little lake, we would go to, this is back in the day when Vance was running Service Experts and I didn't have to work, but I'd go like 4 times a week. And my son and his friends, and my little girl was little, and my son was like 14, 15. And we were one of the first people to inland surf, probably in Utah, but for sure on that lake. We had to have been the first, maybe the third, but it was way before. Do you know anything about inland surfing?
Is that sort of like where you use the wake of the boat to surf on the wake? Is it like wake surfing?
Yeah, you get up with the rope, but you throw the rope back in the boat and the wave pushes you. So we bought an inland surfboard, one of the very first ones, and we didn't know what speed you drive. We just kept trying till we did it, and then we've been addicted ever since. Yeah.
You should talk to so Alex, it used to be Alex Perini, now it's Alex Mosier. Alex's husband, Zeb, who's also a Blue Corona client, not surprisingly. His parents owned a marina on Lake Norman in Charlotte. And so one time when she was newly married, she sent me this video, like, this is, among the reasons I love Zeb. And he's wake surfing off the back of a boat. Someone throws him a beer. He shotguns the beer while he's wake surfing. And I was like, gosh, this guy's like, that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. My daughter was famous for juggling while she was surfing. So it's so fun. It's so fun.
It's interesting. It's funny. I think when a lot of people think of Utah, they think of the outdoors, but probably mostly the mountains. So it's cool, to hear you talking about the lakes, because I'm sure people that live out there, know about that, but there's
not enough lakes. We are short on lakes. We could use many more lakes because it's a desert. Utah's
Yeah.
a desert, so most of the lakes are dams, and they're to provide water for
Yeah.
us, and the lakes down south are for provide water for Southern California.
Yeah.
Takes
So
all
it's
the
funny, you already covered some of this, but I didn't prep you for this, but I had some sort of rapid fire questions to help the audience get to know your personality a little bit. You humor me. They're really easy. It's just like stream of consciousness, whatever comes up. So coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Morning or evening person?
Morning.
Dogs, cats, or no pets?
All of the above.
Okay. Gym or the great outdoors for
Gym.
exercise? Oh, wow. Okay.
I love the great outdoors, but if I have to exercise, I like lifting weights.
Yeah.
But it's
Favorite.
just to enjoy outside. I would rather enjoy outside. But if you're talking about I got to get a workout in,
Yeah.
I like lifting weights.
What about favorite vacation in recent memory? Or location of?
Oh, yeah. We went, this is my son and his wife and my daughter and my husband and I went through France. We started in Paris, went through, oh no, have I forgotten it? The part where the Maginot Line is, and like, oh, those beautiful little towns that are both German and French, and then down to Chamonix where my daughter lived for some time, and
Oh, wow.
Annecy, and hiked up to Lac Blanc, and a scariest hike. I was bawling my eyes out. It was so steep and scary.
It's interesting
Blanc
that
is amazing.
they always talk about like the freedom, America and all the freedoms that we have, but then I'll see these people hiking in Europe where it's like, tons of exposure. And I just think to myself, like in the United States, they would have you'd be like strapped in, you'd have to sign a waiver.
I know. And then Italy, even worse. And I love it all. And my son spent years in Italy, and we spent a lot of time there, and my daughter was a little girl, so that was fun. But this trip was my favorite because it was right before my son had kids, and it was just us, and it's really hard to get the family together. So
Do any of your kids work in the business?
No, my son, he's the director of sales planning at E&J Gallo Winery.
Oh, wow.
And my daughter is getting a PhD in anthropology and history at the University of Michigan. She's researching a tiny island, really, really tiny island where she lived for quite a while in the Southern Indian Ocean called Reunion. Have you heard of it? Just
No.
east of Madagascar. She's headed there next week again for more.
Which one went to Hopkins? Didn't one of them? Okay. That's what I
She went
thought.
to Hopkins, and that's what I think really set us up for success with Blue Corona. I think it would have been a success no matter what, but getting to come there and work hand in hand. Zach, oh my gosh, I have so much. We owe so much of our success to Zach early in the game. And of course, Bailey and I became friends, and she was great. And Allie, I have to mention everyone. So Bailey, Allie, I think I just got to get my notes because I need to remember everybody. Chase is great. And now I'm working with Bailey's sister.
Yeah, Jamie.
Barely started with her, but I can't brag about them all enough. I love them. And Erin's the best. I hated it when she couldn't work with us anymore, but she is obviously doing very big things. And I'm hoping to get to work with her on that lead capture live program.
Yeah.
So anyway, I can't brag about your people enough.
It's funny. I think I used to sort of, joke around with people that were in the trades that, for as different as our businesses might seem, there are an awful lot of similarities, and a lot of it is, it's a lot of the people, it's just hiring the right people, values, culture. It's just so critical. How long have you guys been in business? How long's Mountain Air been in business?
So we've been in business since 2008.
Wow. And that is a challenging time period, and probably a challenging time to start, a business, and a lot of privately held businesses don't make it. Was there a time that you sort of knew it was going to work, that it was going to, you were going to be around, or it's just like every day it's just
Okay.
up and
So when Vance decided to start over, so I'll give you the old history after, since you asked this question first. So Vance decided to start over, and the beginning of September, he left Service Experts. We were acquired by Lennox Industry, but then Lennox Industry acquired Service Experts. So that's how that all went down. But when he decided to leave, it was the beginning of September. It was wild, just a wild start, because he's like, we got to be in business now. Let's do it. We'll retire by the time we're 55. Ha ha. And blah, blah, blah. But I just have to look at my notes so I don't get, but we started Mountain Air in a matter of weeks. And we installed our first furnace the beginning of October 2008. And as we all know, on September 29th of 2008, the stock market crashed. And we, in fact, made a strategic decision to use our credit cards to fund the startups. So all the parts and supplies and the trucks, everything, maybe get some miles from it and leave our money in the stock market where it was making money.
yeah.
Until those payments became due, which was the next month, right? Yeah. So basically we had the money to do the startup in September, and it was all but gone when it came time to pay for it. So it was crazy.
Those are really, when you're experiencing at the time, the stress, I think, is we had a handful of moments like that. We started the business in 2008 as well. The difference was I had no money. I had money in a retirement, I had money in stocks through my retirement.
That's what we had. Yeah.
But it's like, my dad was like, this is a terrible, terrible time to start a business. And like, what are you thinking? And the recession. And I was sort of telling him, like, I don't even notice recession because I don't have anything, it was
right. That's
different than like, once you have, more assets, then you start watching these things and it's like a big, big problem. But when you're broke, it's like,
Well, here's the thing. I was a buyer at Nordstrom in my previous life, and they had this marketing story parable that everyone's heard a different version of, but I'm gonna refer to my notes again because I don't want to mess it up. But do you remember the story about the man with the hot dog stand? And he owned the stand, and he ran it for years and years. And then the economy hit a recession, and he just kept selling his hot dogs and enjoying what he did, like he always did. He wasn't aware of the fact that the other hot dog stands around him were failing or losing money. And his stand just kept selling hot dogs. People visited him because he was happy, and it was a place to get away from the news. Everybody that's all they would talk about, is the recession. And then his son came home from college and the summer vacations and started talking to his father about the recession. And the father hadn't really noticed it, but what the son was telling him that he should do to survive the recession. And so the guy said, well, I better listen to my son. And the son said, sell your stock. And the father did. And he, just don't carry so much stuff and cut your prices. So the father did, and buy cheaper buns and dogs. And the father did that. And as soon as the business started to slow, the son said he needed to diversify also and cut down his hours of running the stand and look for other ways of making income. And the father did. And it's funny, but the father ended up failing. So in 2008, we decided to live like it was 2007. And even though we were brand new, we committed to staying optimistic and providing the best service and the best quality and treating our customers like they deserve to be treated, and spending our money on marketing. And the vendors would just come hang with us because they were so depressed wherever they went. They would just, and we were so busy, it kind of was like, could you leave? We have a business to run, but they just like hanging with us because it was like the only little hub of optimism at
Yeah.
our little tiny size, and I don't know if it was the same for you, but
No, would you say you and Vance are optimists sort of by default, or have you had to, was that like a deliberate sort of a fake it till you make it? Or is one of you like the optimist and sort of balancing out the other?
optimist. I'm not. I'm probably more fearful than someone should be if they're going to own a small business,
Yeah.
and he's not, and he's always optimist, but we made a conscious choice. Like the reason I told the hot dog story is because that was the story we were going to hang on to. And we wanted to just keep sending the message to everyone because we knew it was the only way, like the only way to do it.
I heard someone ask Warren Buffett, I think it was at their recent annual meeting, they were asking about inflation and what they should do. It was like someone in the audience, what should I do about inflation? I think it was, like a younger person. Do you have any advice for a younger person who's now entering this world with high inflation? And he was kind of saying, be the absolute best at what you do. Like if you're the best, your business is the best, or you're a doctor and you're the best, or you're a lawyer and you're the best, people are always going to come to you. And, maybe they'll be paying you with like, pigs or eggs or something instead of, dollars. But if you are the best at what you do, there'll always be people that demand, have a demand for you. So that was sort of his advice, as opposed to some, financial engineering, which I thought was really cool. Cause you can't control. I think that's what so, causes so much fear is like, it's like a lack of control. The costs are sort of rising. There's really nothing you can do about it. But his comment is like, just work to make your business the best. And that's what I hear in your kind of that 2008, like, let's just be positive and confident, make the business best, serve the customers. And that's a playbook that never
stops.
Yeah, it's the best playbook, period.
Yeah. And there's always going to be demand. It's just not as much.
Mm-hmm.
So you better win that. And the only way to win that is through your reputation and your work. And it gets more and more difficult to provide quality the larger you get. And so.
Well, now, before Vance was in the industry, you were working at Nordstrom as a buyer. What's it like kind of working together? Did you kind of adapt to that pretty easily, or was it sort of like one of those things where it was like kind of a ongoing work in progress?
It's really tough. I tell people, if you worked with your spouse, you would not see them the same. Like I'll look at people like at work and I think, and not so much now, but when we owned Barlow, and I used to think, if you saw your husband here, you wouldn't think he's like all that like you do, because there's these flaws you see at home that everyone sees each other at home, but there's a whole nother set of flaws at work. And he sees them in me and I see him in him, and we're together 24 hours a day. We go to work together. We drive home to work together. He's a risk taker. I'm not good. I am actually. I'm a big risk taker. Just compared to him, I'm not.
Yeah.
There's nobody else in our business that's willing to take the risks we are. I mean, they really aren't. It's not their personality. So I am, but compared to him, I'm not. So
how do you navigate? How do you navigate? So if you're on sort of a continuum of risk taker and he's on a different, side of that spectrum, kind of who wins? Is it sort of like, is it you're kind of reining him in, but every now and then you let go of the bit and just kind of let him run? Or how does that dynamic work?
It's different all the time. It changes up. Sometimes he just does the stuff because he's just going to do it. And then other times, I'm fearful, like I said, so I'll go, no, that's blah, 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 blah. And then he'll explain to me why it's not. And then the light bulb will come on, because it's it takes risk to be the best. It really, you can't do it. But, an educated risk is way better than an uneducated risk. So
I
I'm
do
sure we
remember.
balance each other out, but I'm sure people get sick of listening to us balance things out.
I remember we were at some point sort of transitioning. We were trying to put sort of different leaders within Blue Corona kind of in charge of different business units. And we would tell them, like, just treat your department or your unit as if you own it. Like, it's a separate business and you own it. And I remember Tyler at the time, Tyler Yost, who's still with us, been with us for, who knows how many years at this point. But Tyler was running a sort of ranked first local, which was sort of like a stripped down, affordable for small businesses package that we had. And I remember saying to Tyler, like, your department is running so great, but it's not growing like it should be. And he said, well, I will only invest in sort of marketing, like as if I were going to do it with my own money, and where there's like 100% ROI. Like, I can see the ROI, and I'm like, we can measure everything with marketing. And so, you can test things. And if you test 5 things, you might find 3 that have a positive ROI and 2 are a disaster. But I told him, like, you're not going to know. By the time on the front end that something would be a home run, all the competitors are already driving up the, it's like pay-per-click before anyone knew what it was. We didn't know if it was going to work. You had to try it. And maybe if you bid on the wrong keywords, it wasn't very good, but you fine-tuned it, But I was like, Tyler, if you wait until something's a no-brainer, it's gone. There's no opportunity. And so then I told the rest of the executive team, I said, I think telling folks kind of to treat it as if it's theirs, it's their money, that only works if they have sort of the entrepreneurial risk, calculated risk. And Tyler was like, oh, no, I'm super conservative. And I was like, well, then, that's a good talent, being like super conservative, but not for the person who's trying to, grow it. And Tyler is like
in so many ways, because we are always like, you have the freedom to do whatever it takes, to do what's right for the customer. Don't expect to have to come get any approval from anybody. Do what it takes to do what's right for the customer. And think of yourself as an entrepreneur, but you bring it home because, as you know, because you have lots of heating and air conditioning companies, technicians will make decisions for customers the same way. Well, I'd put this together and do this and do that, and I'd fix it myself. And then you're like, wait, no, don't think of yourself that way, because they're calling you because you're the expert. Yeah. They are not do-it-yourselfers. You are, because this is what you love. You just do what's right for that equipment, okay? Yeah. So it's the same thing. Yeah, it's the exact same thing. It's something we talk about. That was a light bulb moment for me. You just said that.
Now talk about I guess talk about what do you like about working in the home service space? I mean, some of it comes across in just hearing you talk about the business, but as someone who worked for sort of the corporate, at Nordstrom and then transitioned into the home services world, what do you like about it, or what's special about it?
So I grew up in the home services world because my dad started Barlow Heating and Air Conditioning in 1954. And then in 2000, well, in 1993, we bought it from him. And then in 2000, Lennox came to us to purchase us. So I grew up in it. So that's one of it. And Nordstrom, it's changed a lot over the years, and it's just been back east since, I don't know, the 90s or something. But Nordstrom ran the same way. You're your own entrepreneur. Customers come first, customers. And so I think it isn't the business we're in, it's about the people. Clients are the customers, and being the best, just full circle to what we were talking about a while ago. As long as you can be the best and you can be passionate about your reputation, then it's not so much about what you're doing, about the bigger, being part of something bigger.
Yeah. And I guess, what are some things that What's changed as the business has grown? Either, have you had to put more, sort of structure in place, or how you organize your team and different roles? How has that changed as you've grown?
I bet it's kind of the same for you. Everybody does everything in the beginning, right? And then slowly you separate and then separate some more and separate some more. And now it's about processes.
Mm-hmm.
But we we divide our year up instead of in quarters into trimesters because that's how our weather works. And so it's kind of a different flywheel each trimester. And so for the shoulder season trimesters, our whole story was about perfecting and developing processes while hanging on to who we are.
Mm.
And so I think that's the hardest thing about growing, is getting those processes, scaling, but not losing your soul in the process. You know what I mean?
How is that concept of the trimester something that is widespread in your geographic area, or was it something that you picked up from someone like an industry coach, or how did you come up with that?
Our operations manager, Chad, came up with it. Before he was our operations manager, he was a sales guy, and that's what he saw it immediately. Like he was from a different industry in sales, but now he came into our industry through sales, and he's like, yeah, I just divided up this way. And we're like, wow, that in Utah, that's exactly what it is. This, like, how we run our business.
Mm.
Each one of those is all unique.
Mm.
So we're in T2. It just started May 1. So
Yeah.
that's what how we talk about it.
Would you say, like, again, as the business has grown and you start to sort of specialize roles and all that kind of stuff, are you more of the sort of just thinking about what would make the most sense for us, or are there other companies that you kind of admire that you look at from afar and say, this is how they're doing it? Like, I guess I've always wondered, are like some people just sort of like, they just think about their business and think about the customers and what they have to accomplish, and then they just kind of come up with the infrastructure or the structure that makes sense. But there are other folks where I feel like it's more of like, well, what are the best people in the industry doing, and we'll just kind of copy that and tweak. I'm sure there are other options.
Better at the latter. I know people are a part of many networks, and there's so much to learn from each other. We're huge Lennox dealers, so we always go to their meetings, and we get a lot of ideas and things there. We could really improve that, but I think what we did was go with that concept of always being the best and taking care of our customers and doing quality, and just honed in on that. But now, as we have to scale, we just started to read scaling books. We started with like a Vern Harnish thing, and
I have it sitting here somewhere. Scaling up.
Scaling up, yeah. Pretty complicated. We're now involved with the table group a lot.
Okay. Is that Patrick Lencioni?
Yes. Yeah. And his right-hand man, Cody, is one of the guys. So my son and 2 twins, remember my wakeboard boat? It's always going to come back. That's who I hung out on the lake with. Yeah, 14-year-old boys. That's pretty much my mentality. And I loved every minute of it. But these 2 twins are heavily involved in his business. Nice. Travel all over the world, deal with Nike or whoever, and then they'll reach out to little us. So that helps. But back to I shouldn't talk about, I know Vern and Pat are friends and everything, but it all started with his thing in his book, and about, if you have nowhere to start, pick the people. Yeah. So, and Vance was like, we can't scale. We did it with Barlow, and we just dropped the ball here and we dropped the ball there. And I'm like, no, we have to scale. We just don't have to do it the wrong way this time, Yeah. So there was this little thing going on between us. So we started by picking the people, and we said, okay, who inside is a leader, and who are they, and do they represent who we want to be? Because Vance and I can't do it anymore. And Stevie Zanetti, she's our install manager. She's amazing. And then Chad, who I told you came up with the whole T1, T2, T3 thing. And we started with those two, and now we've grown the leadership team. And wow, that's been more what we've leaned into than the actual industry. So I think sometimes we really need to work on that, being networking within the industry a little better. So we kind of are too much on our own island, but I like that too. But we'll lean into more.
Well, I think it's kind of cool. I mean, I've never heard anyone reference the Table Group or Patrick Lencioni in the home services space. You're the first. But I know very well who he is in the Table Group, because there are a lot of people in the B2B world, that's like, that go to the conferences where he's speaking and that kind of thing. So I think, there's probably some advantage that you get kind of going outside just, the same folks that go to every, AC, ACA, and, all the different.
Yeah, Nexstar, all the stuff. Yeah, that we really need to do better on. But you're right, it was great. And with Cody and Casey, it was, their main thing is culture trumps strategy every time. And we already thought that. They just put it into words and simplified it for us. It can get complicated, scaling.
Yeah. Well, I was also going to ask you, I think I know the answer, but with respect to culture, was that something that you were very deliberate about from kind of day one, or was it more of sort of an organic, like culture is there, whether you're really formal about it or whether it's just, sort of evolves organically? Would you say you were more sort of deliberate about it, or was it more organic?
So it was organic in the beginning, and then it became more and more deliberate. After Stevie came on, she brought so much good to the culture. She's such a positive person, and she sees the best in others. And that's part of our culture, is to always see the best, especially in our customers, but in each other. Like as soon as you start looking at what's bad in each other, it just crumbles. And that just is her natural personality. And so our culture became better and better just because she was there. And now we're very deliberate, and we've defined it, and we're very deliberate about it, and we're very focused on keeping it. It's a lot to keep a culture.
Absolutely love, you highlighting that in Stevie. I'm actually, this time every week, at 4:30 every Thursday, there's a call that we do called the Good News Call. And, it didn't start that way. It started during COVID when we went remote, and we met every day at 4:30 to basically say, what are we seeing? What are the account managers, the salespeople seeing in the marketplace? You remember when COVID first hit, people weren't sure they were going to be able to get the technicians in people's houses. Are we an essential service? Are we not? That kind of stuff.
Oh, right.
And so every day we were meeting, and it was like, what are you hearing from your clients in California? What are you hearing from your clients in Colorado? Like, is HVAC an essential services? Plumbing, is demand going up because people are working from home? We were just like getting everyone together.
We were reaching out to ACA and saying, what are they doing? What's the government saying? You're getting that mixed message. And
then it became sort of sharing successes. Someone would have a success with a, remodeler or something in Chicago, and then say like, oh, wow, another account manager would say, oh, I have a remodeling company in Northern Virginia. They would love, something like that. But the reason I bring it up as it relates to Stevie is I'm always telling that, sort of the collective group, and it's all hands are invited, but, could be 30 people show up, could be the whole company, is, highlighting the things that your teammates are doing, clients are doing, the positive stuff. It like begets, like when you're complimenting, when you give attention, like your attention is the most valuable thing. And so when you're shining your attention on people doing good, doing the right thing for customers, I just feel like then you get more and more of it, as opposed to, a lot of companies that I worked for, it was like, it's just all criticism. Like you screwed this up in the presentation, or Ben, like, why'd you price this way? And it's like, geez, did I do anything correctly today?
Yeah.
So I love her focusing on, like when you said even about customers, I'm sure you have, every now and then we have, we're dealing with small business owners, and, they're wearing a lot of different hats sometimes when they're smaller, and, they're not always have as much time to, read through an account manager's lengthy email about, what's happening with their digital marketing. And so sometimes those initial calls are like, why are the leads, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And homeowners, I can imagine you probably get, the homeowners are even broader on a spectrum, just, why did you do it this way? Or why'd you charge me for this? Or, whatever.
I tell people when they come, and I do have one person that she's from another company. So she had been at another company where they had lots of complaints, and it's really hard for her to understand that, or maybe a new tech, sometimes it's hard for them to understand, the customer, I'm like, we don't get those complaints, because the minute they happen, we believe the best in the customer and we take care of it. And it's like minutes before they're diffused. It's not like we go through the whole, because there is a process I know that we should stick to, like diffusing the customer and everything, but it's just like a natural thing. Oh yeah, well, let's get that taken care of. I mean, but on the other hand, if a piece of equipment has repeated problems, that's a little harder to overcome, because you can't keep taking care of the same thing. But yeah, I feel like right off the bat, if you could just let them know right then and there. And same with all the team. And I'm probably the negative one sometimes, like you're saying, is why did we do this? Why did we do that? I'm just thinking about this meeting I just left. I'm like, well, that's exactly what I just did. And there's Stevie, and she's always balancing things out. And she's not just going, oh, see the good in it. She's like, you know what? If you see it this way, then this. And then I watch her handle it with people, and I'm like, oh, wow, that works. So,
but what you've highlighted in that is almost like, I know we got to a certain size, and, I had a business partner who wasn't involved in the day-to-day, but, he had a equal financial stake in the company, as I did. And so we were aligned in that regard. But like occasionally he would highlight, he would say, like, you, Ben, are the limiter. When you go into the room and there's a problem and you're like Mr. Idea Guy and you're throwing out solutions, you're not building up your team to solve those types of things. So if you like working 7 days a week, and like if you want to be the hero, like every time, like keep doing that. But like, he's like, if you bring some of your key people in a conference room and say, all right, let's brainstorm ideas, do you think anyone's going to talk with how aggressive, of a idea generator you are? He's like, you're kidding yourself. And I remember when I first heard that, I was like all upset. I'm like, you're such a jerk, like, why would you say stuff like that to me? And then, probably after a couple glasses of wine, I was like, gosh, he's 100% right. Like,
oh, you are so right. And it's so hard to see it. It's like that light bulb goes on and it goes out as fast as it goes on. As soon as somebody calls and says, fix this for me. In fact, Stevie called about another problem. She handled the one. There are two today, and she handled the one. And I'm just like, why didn't I just listen to her? She was collaborative. She solved the issue. She's off to the right foot. This is all going to work out. And then something else came at her while I was on the phone. I was like, well, do this, this, and this. So she did. And she's like, well, that blew up. I'm like, why did I try to solve that for her? Yeah. She had it. Why did I even do that?
It is tough. It's I don't think it's
You're totally right.
There's a book called it's not a Lencioni book, but it's similar. It's called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it sort of talks about how, you have all these positive traits and strengths, and, that are a large part of why you've been so successful and the business has been so successful. But you get to a size where, you have to evolve. And, and so like, I know one of them, I think is like the desire to add, kind of add too much value, to like be the one that always has the answer. It's like one of the things that I love so much about watching Mike, our now president. Mike is like, just leads with questions, he's just great at it. Whereas I'm so quick to, to sort of throw out statements. He almost never does that. And I watched the team get so much better. I told him, like, you're the best coach.
It's so easy too.
had.
I can't do it. Like Vance doesn't do it. I don't do it. It's so easy.
Yeah.
Like it's so natural to give answers. Like, what do we know? We don't know anything more than you know. So
yeah,
you're going to grow light years because I asked the question. It's just like, rephrase it. I don't know.
So much of it is so simple, but it's hard. It's simple, but it's hard.
It is so simple and so difficult.
Yeah. What I was thinking that, you have been involved in home service, I think, long enough that you've probably seen this happen multiple times, which is where, marketing goes through these, sort of these big shifts. Like, so I was thinking like when it went from like one yellow page book to like 20 books in larger markets, like the DC market, because DC has the DC, Maryland, Northern Virginia, we had like 35 yellow page books. And then there were like 3 different yellow page companies. So it was, they keep chopping up the real estate. And then it, of course, went from the yellow pages to the web and Google. And so where marketing kind of completely changes. And you've been in the industry long enough that there's some business owners where when they started their company, it was Google. Like I mentioned yellow pages stories and they're like, the what? It's like that kind of thing.
Right.
Was it obvious kind of when those things were happening? I mean, marketing is just one part of what you're dealing with as someone running the type of business you have. And so I guess talk about some of those moments where marketing kind of evolved or changed.
I would love to, because it was good. It was good. I don't have a marketing background, but I was in charge of marketing. So we started with obviously the yellow pages, because it's 2008, a website, direct mail, and a newspaper, a Hill Donnelly. We had 10,000 names, and we just sent direct mail out and things like that, and friends and family and all of that. And it was very successful. And I am I allowed to give a shout out to a different marketing company?
Oh, sure. Yeah, of course.
I mean, it's no longer, he's still in marketing or something. Anyway, Ryan Parshall with Cowtown Marketing in Kansas City is who we started with. And his graphic designer was Justin Oswald. And they gave us a really good start. They were a little ahead of the game. They weren't a big name ahead of the game, but for our size, way ahead of the game with websites. And so I would love to tell you about all my website rebuilds down the road, because they're good, they're important marketing stories, and that is why we're here. So anyway, he gave us a good start. And then early on, because of my kids, and Brendan and Cody and Casey were just starting out in the business world. And I hung with them enough that I knew reviews mattered a lot. And I doubt Ryan would remember, because there's a lot of reason why I doubt he would remember, but I would talk to him and I'd say, like, the reviews are the thing. Reviews are the thing. And I thought it was Yelp more than I realized it was Google, right in the early days when Yelp first took off. But reviews. That's all that matters. How can we get reviews? How can we get reviews? I don't get it. How do you get them? What do you do? And I was super aggressive about learning. And it wasn't too short. It was shortly after that he was like, hey, reviews are super important. And it's the same thing with mobile. I was like, hey, people are going to search on their phones. And he was like, this is all for young people. That's what I kept hearing. And I'm like, no, people are just going to want to sit on their phones. Their heat's going to be out. They're not going to want to get up. And he was like,
Isn't it funny that you say that, and now I'm sure people listening are like, duh, but I know exactly what you mean, because there was a period where in the marketing world, it was like, this year's the year of mobile. Everything's going to be mobile, everything. And you, even as a forward thinking person, I was like, no, like my mom is not going to be glued to her phone. Just the other night, we were at a restaurant and we were joking around that we like looked around, in 85% of the restaurant, it's like couples. And they're on their phones, like during dinner. And it's like, man, like the world
The world is
Yeah.
glued to their phones.
Oh yeah, and I don't know. I had the first, one of the first Blackberries, so I was kind of into that anyway. But I knew, and a short time later, he's like, "Oh, you got to get a mobile site." And he was great. I'm shout out to him, and I don't think he's your competition at all anymore, but maybe I'm wrong, and so sorry if.
It's okay. It's okay. It's not.
But yeah, I knew those things. I knew those things because of my kids, not because of business or marketing or anything I'd learned in marketing. And then, yeah. So, and now I'm telling you, I was telling Chase and Jamie this, TikTok's working for people in my industry.
Mm.
And I don't remember who said, well, that's for younger people. I'm like, I'm sorry, but the people in my office that use TikTok, they are not young. So I don't know what to say.
I'm on it an embarrassing amount, like
I don't
all
use
those
it even.
comedy videos and.
Yeah, I don't even
Quick.
use it. But I know it's working for people in our industry. So whatever you want to do to get me hooked up to being the first one to succeed on TikTok, I'd like to be that person. But anyway, yeah. So that's what I've always loved about Blue Corona, is that you guys have always allowed me to get ahead of this, a head start, especially with Google, which is obviously the big piece of
The
the
800-pound gorilla. Yeah.
It is, and you guys have always, and that's always our question, what's going on? What do we not know about? What can we get in on? Like, what's Google about to do? I know you don't know, but I know you have a feeling. Let's go with whatever you're feeling. And you guys have always embraced that. And it's a huge part of our success is because you've allowed us to stay just a step ahead. And it's a lot harder now because everyone has it figured out, you know?
Well, it's funny. We had I think we still have the domain, but it was aheadofnext.com. And, and so it's sort of like you're constantly trying to, again, stay ahead and test new things. And I think one of the hardest things is just getting, it's when you're testing new things, you're not going to have the maximum ROI. If you took $10,000 a month and said, we're going to test different marketing channels, again, some of them might be runaway, successes, but they're going to be ones that are like a complete bust. And so it's tough to get, people that are, that sort of have that marketing mindset. But that's one of the benefits of having, one of our reasons for wanting to grow was, you want to have a big enough customer base that, like we have some clients that are super forward thinking, like kind of that marketing mindset where they're like, I don't care about, like, you show me the cost per lead and that's great. And over a longer period of time, they'll use the data. But some of the stuff they want to try just to try and learn, and what will we see and what will we, it's learning. It's like again, they'll run ads on TikTok and say, like, maybe we can use it for recruiting. Like, could we actually use it for marketing?
Which ones are working? What's not, know?
Right.
And I like that, if it's not working, then they usually let me know, because I'm not as good as I should be about going through I'm sure you hear this all the time, going through all your data that you provide. It's super important that I have it, because I go back and reference it when I need it, whether it's for a meeting or whatever else. But I like that they'll go, okay, so Lori, here's the data. And Bailey was so good at this too. This isn't working. Let's move your money here. So she'd let me test something, but she'd also let me know it wasn't working.
Yeah.
And so that's why I feel confident saying, yeah, let's do this. Let's go for it. I feel confident because you guys are going to come back to me and say, all right, that one was
time to cut and run. Yeah.
Yeah. But this one, let's keep spending some there. And you have the data, and I don't have to figure it all out myself, because it's a lot.
Well, I don't think most
hire me someday. It sounds fun.
Well, I think, one of the things that we're working on, we hired a guy named Dinesh Damija. Dinesh was a professor where I went to college. He was a tenured professor when I was an undergrad. but I could have never gotten any of his classes. He was like engineering and computer science, I think. And so it's kind of cool. Now he works for Blue Corona, and part of what he's doing is basically taking all that data and getting it into a sort of a new database structure where it'll be much easier. Like all the data will be there when you want it, but being able to surface insights without having to go through, as much. So for like, when you say, I like having all the data because I can reference it, but I'm not going to go through, all of that. And I think
Sometimes I don't even go through the summary, honestly.
right.
I just hope that now it'll be Jamie will go through it.
Yeah.
And tell me what's happening,
Yeah.
So.
That's awesome. What I guess any tips that you would give, someone starting out in the, say they're starting a home services company, like a handful of lessons learned or things that like what are
marketing
or business marketing.
So if it's business, it's always the same thing. It's about the people. It's always going to be the same thing. It's always comes back, and every time we lose our way, we remember that it is about the people. If it's marketing, and it's just part of being a bigger thing, part of being something bigger. Doesn't like home services isn't, it's not that exciting. It's really cumbersome. It's a tough business to be in. But if you see it as something bigger and being part of something bigger, it's just more, it's more fun. That's all.
I know I remember having a friend who switched from sort of, again, the business world to doing marketing for a home services company. And one of the comments was, I sort of said, like, what's it like going from, when you're in the corporate world working for a bigger company, like a Fortune 2000 company, they were flying him around all these, fancy conferences and stuff. And he had a bigger budget and all this. And he was like, the most satisfying thing is the seeing the rise in frequency of seeing our vehicles, our service vehicles, like around town.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's like tangible, like that's me, it's the sales team and the company, but he's like, I'm throwing the fertilizer, the marketing fertilizer kind of out there on the field. And, when I see it's like, he's like, when I first started, I would see like a truck, when I was driving in, he's like, maybe I see one of our trucks. He's like, now I feel like I see him everywhere. And he goes, and then of course, friends that know that he works for that company says, oh, I saw your truck here. Oh, I saw your truck there.
Yeah.
So there is something, if you're into business, to me, that growth, whether it's, you're working for a home services company or a big brand, it's almost like you can see it more in it working for a small, medium-sized business. I like that aspect.
Yeah, just like being a part of a bigger thing. When Christy was going off to college to play volleyball, and her friend was going off to another college to play basketball. And do you know who Dick Motta is? An NBA coach. He won the championship in '78. Coached 5 NBA teams. Blah blah blah. Well, Vance's dad worked with Dick Motta back at Weber State. He kind of put Weber State on the map, and he was debating about whether to go to the NBA or not. Like he couldn't decide. And anyway, we ran into him up at the lake. The wakeboard boat comes in again. Up at the lake, because he has a place at Bear Lake, and they were saying, what's your one advice you could give to us going off to college sports? And he said, just enjoy being part of something that's bigger than yourself. And that's what you should take from me, just enjoy it, embrace it, and be it. And I think it's really hard because that's the MBA, and we're heating and air conditioning. So it's a little different, but if you got to kind of embrace it anyhow.
Yeah.
But,
that's awesome.
Marketing is just like, I think the lesson is to invest in it, right? And it's about the people. And so obviously I've been with you guys for years. I still talk about my original marketing company, and in between Am I allowed to say names?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
In between, I tried Webimax because I thought, okay, they're bigger, they're better, they're shiny. And it was, why did I hang on to it? Why didn't I just like recognize something that wasn't good and move forward sooner? I'm glad I didn't, because then I learned so much, because I spent so many hours reading about marketing till I ran upon Blue Corona, and I filled out a web form or something, and you returned the call back in the day when you did that. And it was a big payoff, because I'd learned enough to know what was wrong and what was right. And then after you have someone that knows what they're doing, trust them to do what's right. And then when they don't, because sometimes they don't, hold them accountable, and they'll always come back. They'll always,
When I always think about what you were saying about, taking care of your customers. I mean, we've talked sort of at length. I mean, we're always trying to be, trying to be the best, trying to be perfect, but inevitably we make mistakes. And the whole idea was like, let's respond well. Whether we make a mistake with an employee, whether we make a mistake with a customer, it's like the thing that drives me most nuts, like, as a consumer, is like when a business screws up and you can't get anyone to listen or take responsibility for it. It's like,
that's it.
Here that you screwed up. I just want it to be fixed, and I just want maybe be heard, so that I know that if I keep using you, it's less likely to happen. Like you learned from this, and so like you put in place the trap, or the guardrail that you didn't have in place. Like I'm cool with that. Just own up to it, and walk me through the decision making, because there's so many companies that it's like, it's like they feel like it's like they took a course. It was like, don't ever say you're sorry, because then you're responsible, and
how much money can it cost to make something right? And that's hard to scale, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think we're having the hardest time doing, is scaling that. And just, you listen to a phone call and you're like, oh man, did you get that from your other company? Because that's not how it works, and it's hard to track all that. And that's really what we're focused on. And I remember we had an issue there at Blue Corona, and I brought it to Bailey, and she's like, okay, let me talk to the person and give us a little while. And then she talked to the person, and I said, it's just not working, Bailey. And Bailey, like, I don't know, a week later, she had it all fixed up for me. And what do you do with, like, there's no relationship business wise or in real life that there aren't those moments.
Right.
And there are plenty with our customers, but we always make sure it's right.
Yeah.
If one fell through the cracks, which it probably has somewhere, I'm so sorry. And I will make it right if I hear about it. And that's what I've enjoyed about working with you guys.
Well, I don't know that this is actually what's happening, but so much of your mindset with how you run your business, it's like the same kind of mindset. I think that, it's the same flavor of what we're trying to do. And sometimes I wonder if like doesn't attract, like in that regard, as well. It's like, I think, again, someone asked, again, I keep referencing the Berkshire Hathaway folks because they just had their big meeting, but someone asked a question of them. And I think Charlie Munger said something like, the best way to get a great spouse is to deserve one. It's like,
that's big.
Like, if you're a rotten person, selfish and all this stuff, you really think you deserve, some great spouse. And I think a lot of times I think about, like, with business, with businesses, it's sort of like, oh, I've heard people in our business, like not Blue Corona, but our industry at trade, conference stuff, where they're like complaining about their employees and complaining about their customers. And it's like, where do you think this comes from? It's like it all flows south. So if you're constantly complaining about your employees, the problem might be you. So as I listen to you talk and sort of some of the, I guess what I would say kind of secrets to your success, it's like reinforces then the message to our team, which is like, treat the customers well. If there's an issue, figure out what happened, own it. If it's, if we made a mistake, own
like
it.
when there's an issue, because there's always an issue.
Yeah, always.
Right? We're just humans doing our best. So there's going to be issues. Just fix it. That's it.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It's
What's something, what are you focused on? Like, how's 2020 shaping out? I'm a little, it's from the financial market standpoint, it's pretty scary, but how's it shaping up for you guys? And what are you focused on? Kind of what are your priorities right now?
People, definitely capacity. Definitely people, getting good people, keeping good people, keeping the culture. Same thing, same exact thing. Obviously costs have gone sky high, keeping up, trying, like, you could hire a full-time team to keep your prices up to date. Vendors, trying to, it's hard to now all of a sudden have to be stocking. I'm sure you're hearing this from everybody. Like, we could depend on our vendor to have what we needed when we needed it. And now I think there's been shortages. They're all genuine, but I think they're kind of enjoying us being the warehouse,
Yeah.
So how to know the difference between that
Hmm.
and what's real, and making sure we have everything we need to do the business this summer, people and equipment. So that's the challenge. And
I have to believe, I think as the longer I've sort of been involved in the business, the sort of wider my lens gets in terms of, like, there used to be things like, there'd be a talent shortage, digital marketing talent. And I would have this feeling that it's going to last forever, back when we first experienced it. And then, and then things would change and big tech companies would lay people off. And suddenly it was like we had a line of people at the door, and it was like, oh, okay, this doesn't last forever. I mean, it can last for a while, but it doesn't last forever. And I have to imagine, I know the talent shortage in the home services side has been building, for a
way
year.
before COVID.
Yeah.
Way
COVID
before.
was like the match thrown on the, stack of hay type of thing. But from a supply chain standpoint, I have to imagine that, it's going to sort itself out. It's just hopefully sooner rather than, later. But I've read articles that say, like, we're living in a world of scarcity, and people have to understand that from now on, there are going to be shortages of everything forever.
Now on.
Yeah, and it was
From
like,
now on.
really?
Doesn't have to be. The
Exactly.
sky's the limit. There's not a limited pot.
Exactly.
So we're going to be shortages. Everybody stayed home for 2 years. But yeah, it's not from now on. I agree with you. I don't buy that.
Well, you're definitely more optimistic. I know you said it's on the compared to Vance, but I think you're clearly in the grand scheme of things, you're probably more optimistic than you alluded to earlier. And I think that is such an important, just better for your business, better for your people, and probably just better for your quality of life.
Right. Better for your brain.
Yeah.
So whatever's going to happen is going to happen, but one day at a time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Loved having you on.
Thank you so much, Ben.